Tired of everyone telling you to find your passion, but no one telling you how? Welcome to the Korean Connection, and I'm your host, Korean, an attorney with a passion for empowering others to use their many talents and skills towards a path of self-discovery and alignment. Join me as I share my personal stories, professional insights, and practical tips, and how you can connect the dots between what you're great at and turning your passions into purpose. Let's connect. Push it to the left, make it go no more. Make it like no, I'm coming back home. I'm dirt road, all of my you. I'ma be the greatest, write my name in the stone. Write my name in the stone. Yeah, I'm coming back home. Yeah, I'm coming back home. Write my name in the stone. Cause I'm coming back home. Cause I'm coming back home. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Korean Connection. Today's topic, we're going to be discussing finding purpose in the pause. There is a stillness revolution taking place. What if I told you that doing nothing is actually the most productive thing you can do? Welcome to the purpose of the pause, where we are challenging everything you've ever been taught about success, productivity, and the relentless pursuit of more. I'm your host, Kareen, and today we're diving into the stillness revolution that's changing lives by embracing the power of the pause. Now, there's an epidemic, the burnout epidemic, that we have all heard so much about. Now, let's start with a reality check. We are living in an age of the burnout, and the numbers are staggering. According to recent studies, 76% of employees report experiencing burnout, with 28% saying they feel burnout very often or always. When you take a look at Gen Z is reporting the highest level of burnout ever recorded. 68% of Gen Z say they are exhausted before they reach the age of 25, right? The World Health Organization officially recognized burnout as an occupational phenomenon, not just a personal weakness because, you don't have the temperament to manage your time. They are recognizing it as an occupational phenomenon, right? And you're not just lazy, not just tired. We need to reframe the need to rest. What internalized beliefs do we carry about rest, right? For me personally, rest is not something that comes very easily. And, I literally have to plan my rest because my mind is always on go, right? And whenever I'm resting, it comes with a sense of anxiety because I'm always thinking about something that I'm not doing while I'm resting. But how do you recognize the difference between rest and avoidance? Right? How has intentional rest become a part of your purpose? Now, nowadays, our mind tells us rest has to be earned after the checklist of everything you have to do is done. The inbox is cleared, so now I can rest. But guys, your worth is not measured by your output. When I began to prioritize rest, my creativity, it flourished because you can't create in chaos. Because once I embrace, or at least try, because this is something that I'm imputing in my life currently, when I started imputing the rest and the pause, my patience deepened. And I felt not only human again or more aligned, I felt more purposeful. Because I have to constantly ask myself, am I lazy or am I just depleted? How often do we confuse the two, right? Because sometimes I'm forced to rest, right? Because you're so exhausted and overwhelmed by the work of just daily living, just from, just life, dealing with kids, dealing with your career, the pursuit of the hustle, So supporting research is very telling in this area. Research suggests that there are 7 types of rest. You can have physical rest, mental rest, sensory rest, creative rest, emotional rest, social rest, and spiritual rest, right? And that has shifted how we define recovery. how often people are resting in one area, but they're depleted in others, right? And I know you guys can sense that in your daily life. Sometimes you may be able to rest in one area, but you feel unfulfilled in another. What type of rest are you lacking? Or what type of rest do you need? Now, let's look at some of the hidden costs of this hustle culture that we have going on, right? You have to hustle for the money, hustle for the bag, hustle to be rich, to be successful, depending on how you define success. But let's break that down a little bit, right? Let's talk about the physical cost of not getting rest, right? Chronic stress literally shrinks your brain prefrontal cortex, the area of your brain that is responsible for decision making and emotional regulation, right? So when you're stressed out, that shuts down, right? Then you have like the financial burnouts. Financial burnout for companies costs approximately $125 to $190 billion annually in healthcare spending alone, right? Because imagine what happens once you feel burnt out. There's definitely physical symptoms that comes with that. And obviously it can affect your health. So these companies are spending billions of dollars annually in healthcare spending in order to obviously that's not just for stress-related, ailments, but certainly that's a part of it, right? Also, one of the costs that stress and burnout does, it stunts your creative nature. When we are constantly on, we lose access to our default mode network. That is the part of the brain that states that's the part of the brain where innovation happens, right? You can't create if you're constantly on and constantly, in burnout mode. Then you also have burnout that doesn't just affect you. It creates a ripple in the people that surround you. It affects the relationships around you, right? And, oftentimes people see rest as a rebellion. There's a culture shift that's happening right now because of this whole burnout culture, where people are just realizing that the constant hustle isn't sustainable. You can't sustain that sort of lifestyle. So you have things popping up where you're talking about the soft life movement. You're talking about the quiet quitting. You're talking about finding those lazy girl jobs, right? And it's not really about just being lazy. It's about reclaiming your humanity in a system that's designed to just extract every ounce of your energy and make you feel as though if you're not doing something all the time, you're not moving, you're not progressing, you're not growing, you're not thriving, you're not successful, right? We've been sold this lie that our worth is equal to whatever the outputs are of what you can produce. But guys, what if our worth is just just inherent, right? What if your worth is just inherent in who you are and not necessarily conditioned on, what you do or how you earn or whatever those outputs are. Now, let's look at some of the science behind stillness, because we need to also recognize that stillness is good. Stillness is healthy. It's actually necessary. There's some neuroscience behind it. Let me blow your mind with some science. When you're still, your brain doesn't shut down. It shifts into one of the most powerful states available to humans. It's called your default mode network. And what your DMN or your default mode network does, it activates, this is something that's activated during rest, and it connects your distant brain regions. So this is where your moments from when you get the best ideas in the shower, right? When you're sort of like off. And studies show that people who regularly activate their DMN are more creative and better at problem solvers. Your brain actually needs to pause. Now, what are the effects of the pause on your brain? Just 10 minutes, guys, of stillness can literally rewire your neural pathways. It reduces cortisol by up to 23%. because your brain needs pause to transfer information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. Not only does your brain need the pause, sometimes you have to recognize that, sometimes for me, when I'm deciding that, okay, I just want to do some mindless brain activities, right? So my mindless activities that I do when I want to turn off, I turn to TV. I start scrolling on my phone. But guys, there's a crucial difference between taking a pause and scrolling. Scrolling isn't rest. Your brain processes social media like work, not relaxation. So true rest requires absence of input. And when you're on social media scrolling, all you're getting is just flooded with inputs into your brain, right? And so it's not the input that you are trying to avoid by seeking this rest or pause, but you're getting all this different type of input that's activating or stimulating your brain even more. So scrolling is not rest. Mindless TV is not rest. Real stillness means being comfortable with boredom. And believe it or not, guys, that is where the magic happens. What are you afraid of by just being bored? I tell my kids all the time, and I see it with them, with their phones and the constant scrolling on social media, especially now during the summertime where they believe that they don't have any bedtime. You can see like the scrolling really affects their personality. It affects how anxious they are. And they are literally uncomfortable with boredom. My daughter doesn't know what to do when her phone dies. When her iPad dies, she's finding me. She's invading my personal space because she just needs some level of stimulation. But when you're bored, guys, that is literally where the magic happens. Did your values shift once you pause? No, your values didn't shift. They actually become more into focus because the noise is now quieted. I grew up equating hustle with honor. The women in my family are all very strong. I'm in a very female-centered family. They're very strong personalities, very independent, and they all hustle so well. So, growing up and seeing this hustle mentality, just, always working and doing the absolute most. And, they almost like praise how tired you are, right? In fact, when you're not moving, if you're sitting still, there's literally a Jamaican saying that they say where they say, idle hands is the devil's playground, because you can't be idle doing nothing. You always have to be doing something all the time. So, we equate hustle with honor. And, you wear that with like a badge of honor because, you're doing so much, you feel as though, you're being productive. But guys, I realized that when I stopped overextending, I discovered that my creativity wasn't gone. It was just buried in noise. Pausing lets me ask better questions. Like, what is this sustainable? What is this life giving? Are these burdens even mine to carry, right? And these are questions that you have to ask yourself because otherwise you feel as though you have to carry this burden alone or you even have to carry this burden at all, right? Sometimes it's not even your burden to carry. So sometimes you have to ask yourself these questions because it's all about working more efficiently than working harder, There's some supporting research that says in a 2023 report in the Frontiers in Psychology, it says that the hustle culture actually produces toxic productivity where it's perceived as self-worth and it's really just based on external validation. And that becomes like an addiction, right? So you have to sort of ask yourself, who am I without the hustle, right? What have I ignored in the name of progress, right? And some of the techniques that I'm going to implore you to try to incorporate in your life as you try to incorporate, the pause, recognizing that there's there's purpose in the pause, I'm imploring you to take micro pauses throughout your day, right? And one of the methods that you can use in order to take these micro pauses, and this also help whenever, I'm feeling anxious, and it's not novel. It's called the 3-5-7 breathing method. And all it is 3 seconds in, taking a deep breath, 5 seconds holding it, and then 7 seconds out. So let's do this together. 3 seconds in. Hold it for 5. 7 seconds out, release. And if you do this between tasks, it's literally like hitting the reset button to your nervous system. Even 3 rounds of this exercise, it takes you from fight or flight to rest and digest, okay? And so I implore you to try to use these. This is one of the tips that you can use in order to sort of incorporate or find the purpose in the pause. Another thing you can do is just to incorporate a 30-second ritual between, activities. So just simply close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just be intentional for the next 30 seconds of thinking about nothing, of just finding purpose in the pause for those 30 seconds. And this simple activity, it prevents stress from accumulating throughout your day, right? It actually makes you more productive throughout your day by just acknowledging and recognizing the pause, right? There are other techniques you can do. I recently bought this productivity book. Claude, it's from that same company that from your journal, they have a productivity journal. Yes. And in that productivity journal, they talk about working for 30 minutes and then taking a break. And then working for another 30 minutes by breaking up your task into 30-minute, segments, and then incorporating a pause or a break after every 30-minute task. It increases your productivity overall. So you can work for 30 minutes and rest for 10 minutes. And it's not about working less. It's about working for sustainability. You're not going to be able to sustain or even be productive if you're burnt out. So even if you have to schedule the disconnect, right? You can schedule disconnect, and I try to do this or incorporate this sometimes in my routine where I have a turn off for social media. I know people can set those limits on Instagram and some of your other platforms. But even if you have to say, listen, Sunday mornings, there's no screen time until noon, right? Or if your evening ritual, it can be, the phone goes off at 8 p.m. And one of the techniques they tell you in incorporating these social media hacks, they talk about putting your phone in a whole different room, right? Because obviously if it's out of sight, it's out of mind, one. But it also, the more steps you have to take to get to the thing, the distraction, the less likely you are to do it. So to the extent you can put your phone, at bedtime away from you, they even talk about stacking books on top of it. Just the extra effort of, taking the books off the phone might be an additional distraction to kind of help you appreciate the pause, but really be intentional about it, right? Other things that you can do, you can put your phone in do not disturb, vacation mode. You can delete social media apps, which is a little, extreme, but you can certainly quiet them, right? You can turn off the notifications. There's so much you can do in order to, if that's one of your weakness, like it is for many of us. And so sometimes you'll find that your purpose isn't lost. Sometimes it's so hard for you to find the purpose in just a task that you're doing. But you'll find that the purpose isn't lost. It's just waiting in the quiet. And if you just take some time to just find the quiet, it'll come to you. You can understand, and I'm sure you've had these experiences. In those moments of quietness and stillness is when those brilliant ideas come. You're always, you get those epiphanies that you didn't think of before. Boring is the new exciting movement, right? The new movement is embracing boredom. Boredom is your way of saying, I need to create something. So just give me some time to pause, to think, to generate, Start with 5 minutes of doing absolutely nothing. And, one of the things you'll recognize when you start incorporating the pause, it's not going to come without discomfort, right? Start with 5 minutes alone. And notice the discomfort that your body is feeling. And that discomfort is coming from all the addiction. When you think about addicts, when they're weaning off something, that's, what do they call it? When the addicts are trying to wean off something, what do they get? Withdrawal. When they're going through withdrawal, that's what that feeling is you get when you start noticing that uncomfortable feeling of just not doing anything. So you want to, think of it like, doing exercises. You're exercising your brain to get used to or get rid of this addiction of this overstimulation. One of the things that you can do, something's very simple, is just gaze out of a window for 5 minutes. If you don't want to just sit there and not do anything, maybe just do something like look out the window. But the thing is, don't look out the window. Look out the window with nothing in mind. Just look out the window with just intention of just looking out the window. You're not looking for something. You're not trying to overly stimulate your brain. You're really just trying to just appreciate the beauty in all things. I think that will probably make you appreciate the pause, because I can see that probably going down a wrong lane of, people watching and what this person is wearing or where they're going, or, there's a police coming and an ambulance coming down the road. Just focus on, the flower that's out there. Admire the flower, or, the clouds in the sky. Think about, what animals are the clouds forming, something practical that is going to take away that stimuli from your brain that you can appreciate that pause. So that's some of the exercises you can do. But I just want you guys to find the purpose in the pause. So window gazing might be one of those things. Even sitting down to eat a meal, that's 5 minutes. It takes you at least 5 minutes to eat a meal. Be intentional about eating the meal without scrolling. Just focus on the meal itself, right? Focus on the taste of the meal without the distraction. Enjoy the meal. That takes 5 minutes. So just finding purpose in that pause is going to go such a long way. And I want feedback from you guys as to how you're incorporating the pause. And I want to know how that's working out for you. But please find the purpose in the pause. So guys, in a world where we over-glorify the hustle culture, we over-glorify, the busyness. If you're not busy, you're lazy, or you're not being productive, or you're not experiencing growth. Find purpose in the pause and join us next time on The Korean Connection. Thank you guys for connecting with me today. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to my channel, The Korean Connection. To connect with me, you can email me at thekoreanconnection@gmail.com. And don't forget that sometimes your passion whispers before it roars. And if you're listening closely, the next episode might be where it gets louder. Let's connect. Push it to the